Series 1, back to our push assessments. We have lower movement is going to be our barbell squat. Our upper movement is going to be a bench press. So throughout, of course, we're in our base phase right now, and then into our build phase, we are really prepping our members for the assessment, which will be twofold in our peak phase on those Thursdays. So we're going to look for these movements as well as variations and really practice honing in our cues for both of these. So to jump right in, our chest press setup is going to be super important. We can see plenty of members who get onto the bench too quickly and don't really think about that setup, just go straight into the reps or pumping them out real quick. So make sure members are being very intentional about the weight that they're selecting, taking that time to get their body in the right position. Back is flat on the bench. Always. Dumbbells are in line with your chest. So right over the very center of that chest rather than over the shoulders or over the belly, right in the middle. Hands slightly wider than the shoulders. So right in a close grip or a narrow grip, our hands right here, we want them out slightly wider. Feet are flat on the ground to give us that nice solid foundation, or depending on how tall the person is, maybe their feet are slightly behind the knees. Wrists, this one's really important and something that I think we let slide a little bit too often. Our wrists should be stiff. We really don't want them to be like this. There's a lot less support when your wrist is at an angle like this rather than your knuckles being stacked directly over that elbow. Then retracting the shoulders, engaging the lats before we're doing any kind of movement. So the dumbbells are up over the shoulders. We're lowering them down until we get to mid chest. So this first one up top is going to be your range cue. How low are we getting those weights? Where should we stop? Mid chest. If we're going too low, we're going to lose some of that engagement. If we're going too shallow, it's not going to build that range of motion that we know we're focusing on in this base phase in particular. Elbows at 45 degrees. This is a really common one that people are going to go super wide, straight out. Keep that angle, right? We know what we're working right in the center of the chest. So it's only natural that we're going to go like this, right? When we descend the elbows, we want them to be slightly more tucked in towards the torso. So a little bit closer to 45 rather than 90.
Can I just add that really quick? Sorry, Anna. With the 45 degrees, it's in relation to your hip. So I think that's also where some people get confused when we say the 45-degree angle. It's in relation to your hip.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because there's the angle in the elbow this way, like he said, and there's the angle of towards the torso. So there's two things like chicken wings here. That angle is important to pay attention to, right? We don't want this to be 90. We want this to be 45. Awesome. The third one stands for oscillation. Oscillation is the back and forth. Is there a pause? Is there a pulse? Is it fluid? Briefly pausing at the bottom. That's going to give you that opportunity to kind of check in. Am I engaging all the proper muscles? Getting to that foundation right at the bottom before we push back up. Then your joint cue there. On the way up, we're pushing up in a straight line, fully extending the arms without locking out the elbows. So your finishing position is here, not here. No, we don't want that inward rotation. We want it to be always that micro bend. When we're doing squats, when we're doing deadlifts, when we're doing pushes with our arms, we never want to lock out, right? We always want that soft bend. At the bottom, breath work. Before we move, the dumbbells are in that setup position over the chest. It's an inhale, big breath in. We're bracing the core. We come down, holding the breath. As soon as we get to the bottom of that movement where we're getting that brief pause, we're getting ready for the exhale. Big push back up. Really important to work those breathwork cues for both of these movements, for all of our movements. Okay, common errors. I'm going to pass over to Vass.
All right. Yeah. So we are going to actually go through these in a second. So just stay with us for wrist alignment. So we talked about that, right? They need to be nice and stiff. So bending backwards increases that risk injury of that wrist. So like Anna said, nice and stiff, straight line with that joint. And some cue points that we put on there. Squeeze your wrist like you're crushing it, right? Like you're going to really, really squeeze it. And that will help keep that nice placement. Think about punching the ceiling with your weight. Right? You're not going to punch your ceiling like this. You're going to make sure that it's nice and straight up. The one that I see a lot of still when I'm observing classes is the feet off the floor. And it just drives me crazy. I'm short, so I get it. Sometimes I need the risers. But feet off the floor, why? It reduces your stability and your power. I know when I'm lifting heavy, I can feel my feet on the floor because I'm really, really pushing. Like my whole body is engaged when I'm really, really going for it, right? If your members are doing this thing, which we see all the time, they're not lifting heavy enough. Give them heavier weights. They shouldn't be able to do that. All right. So give them something heavier, put their feet on the floor, get them a riser, and then they should be good to go. I always love the external cues, like push your feet into the floor, right? Helps take their mind out of the mechanics and the words that we use that might be too big for them to understand. It's just so simple. I always say it's like the Dummies book, Dummy 101 books for F45. That's what I try to keep it in. So I love nice and easy to follow instructions for our members, especially those beginner members. That's their first day. They are so overwhelmed. They have no idea what's going on. Right? So just keeping it nice and simple is really the best way to go. And then a rushing. We all have these members that just like pick up the heaviest weight and are just like going ham. And all of the things Anna talked about earlier, not doing. Right? So it's those members that are just really rushing. They're just going to get injured. Right? There's so many things they're not focused on, like their wrist alignment, like where their shoulders are their feet on the floor? What is their range of motion? So many things they're not doing. So we need to pause those members and let's just reset them. You then give them an appropriate weight, fix their form, count their reps, and it's so much more challenging for them. Right? So really, really look at those as opportunities to push them actually harder than they think they are by lifting that heavier weight and going super, super quick. Alternatively, on the other side, you have those members that are going really fast because it's too light. Like today, I'm like, if y'all crush 20 or 25 reps, pick up something heavier. Okay, so if they're really just going ham with the lightweight, let's give them something heavier to help them with their growth. The fling of the elbows that we talked about, it is that joint placement of where the angles are. And if they are in that 90, it's putting a lot of strain. If everyone does that right now, put your arms out, get that 90 degree, and just kind of pull back a little bit. You feel that there in that shoulder. Okay, you feel that strain right away. Okay, so that angle of that 45 degree then fires up that side part of your chest. You should feel it as you do that. And that's where we want them to focus on. We want that stretch of that chest. That's how our muscles are going to grow. You're going to stretch them and then contract them because this is a chest press, not a shoulder press, right? So tuck your elbows slightly closer to your rib. Don't let them flare out to your side. Right? Imagine a straight path up and down. Don't let the bar drift towards your face. Sometimes I'll put my hand again, where I don't want them to go, which is in front of their face, and say, keep going, don't hit me, right? And it eliminates that. It makes them go in that straight line without having to think, let me go in a straight line. One of my favorite things, I talk about it in the intro all the time, is the shoulder retraction, right? Your shoulder is the antagonist behind your chest that's going to give you the support to push really, really hard in your chest press. I'll have people start bringing your shoulders up, back, and then down. And then that's your placement. And you want them to do that while they're on the bench. And that's where we start our chest press. That support as you push through, that rotation up as you push through to really support, to give that big, big squeeze in the center for that chest. Okay, we're going to need someone. I don't know, Anna, if you want to pick someone.
I know Heather wants to.
Sure.
So through his chest press, what should we start with? What's the setup?
Like Bass was saying earlier, his feet are grounded into the ground, so his glutes are engaged, his hamstrings are firing, therefore allowing more power in that chest press.
Right? That foundation is super important. So he's got those dumbbells right over the shoulders. Now the feet are drilled into the floor. What about his muscle engagement?
Pack the shoulders back and down. You're going to get a little bit of bow in the chest at that point. So everything is engaged and you're just bringing those dumbbells straight down and a straight up.
Yeah, awesome, Heather. I really like that you identified, you said the chest is going to start to bow, right? So when the shoulder blades, when we're squeezing those together behind the back, the chest is automatically going to lift up a little bit, and that's perfect. What's that range? How do we know if he's getting low enough? What's the proper depth?
Well, you guys were talking about the
90-degree angle.
Mhm.
It was the 90-degree angle I had said.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Bernie. So 90 degrees, is it going to be in the elbow here, or is that going to be the angle from his hip? Because remember, we were talking about both of those angles. Which one should be 90?
I was referring to the elbow.
Beautiful. So from the shoulder, through the elbow up to the wrist, that's our 90-degree angle. What about that hip angle? How close should his elbows be to his torso?
45 is typically what's comfortable.
Yes, exactly. So you're almost making like a W shape with your body. So you've got those, it's like a little arrow shape from elbow to neck to elbow. And then of course your torso is going straight up and down.
What I see a lot of is when they're coming down, they're folding inward, which I guess comes back to the angling. So I'll just stand and I'll kind of be that wall. I'm like, you don't want that dumbbell coming in towards your face. Keep it out, keep it stacked, keep it aligned.
I also want to add, especially when we do move into peak phase, just being ready to spot members, being aware of those members that are going to push really heavy, so you could be ready there and support them. The worst is when someone's really trying hard and the trainer is just off chatting to their favorite member. Drives me crazy. So please don't do that. Be ready to help support and push them, because people really do want to get the most out of their workout and maximize, especially when it comes to peak. So just be ready.
And I'm seeing in the chat, field goal arms, not T-Rex arms. I love that. Field goal is super effective. Everybody knows what field goal looks like. So if that angle, hi Mike, nice to meet you. So if that angle cue isn't working, if for whatever reason they're not able to get that, okay, what does 90-degree mean? Where? Field goal.
I know that Anthony's practicing these in his car. Appreciate the effort, Anthony.
Okay, for our squat, we have a lot of variations in equipment with front squats. We'll do them with dumbbells, we'll do them with kettlebells, we'll do them with barbells. So regardless of the equipment, getting it set up first in order to have that front squat position, you got to do a couple things. First part, we've got that barbell with our palms facing in. The feet are stacked directly underneath the hips. The hands are just outside your legs, right? They're not right in front of the hips. They're not out super wide in that snatch grip, directly outside the hips. Back is super flat. Eyes are straight forward. Now we're going to start to hinge, right? Because we're setting up for this clean. This is just the setup part. So the hips are going to go straight back. So a lot of people will kind of let their shoulders round forward. The bar starts to drift away from the legs. We want to keep it glued, like you're sliding it straight down the legs. Slow and controlled. Right when that bar comes past your knees, a few inches lower, that's when we're going to clean it. This is an explosive part of the movement. So it's a quick push by extending the hips, shrugging the shoulders, right? It's almost like a little flick. It's right at the top. And we're pulling the bar up. Rather than like bicep curl movement, like the elbows are tight to the body. They're not coming forward. And right underneath that third cue there, that mental cue, think jump, but stay on the floor, right? So the feet, we're not actually jumping. It's that quick, powerful motion upward that kind of feels like a jump. Awesome. So now we've cleaned it up. We're in the right position. Check out his elbows. So his elbows are super in line with the very center of his chest. The wrists are nice and high. So he's got the weight in his fingertips. Another option, a lot of people will complain of wrist pain if that's uncomfortable with the elbow height. Wrist flexibility is sometimes an issue. If that's the case, we don't want to go immediately to a back squat. We want to keep it in that front position. So what he's got now is that barbell is resting directly over his shoulders. The elbows are still creating that nice little shelf. And that's going to be our setup for anybody with a wrist issue. All right. So we've caught it. That's our setup. Now we're doing the squat. So think about sitting in a chair. The hips go back first, and then we've got that bend in the knees. So that hip and knee bend, look at where his hips are ending. So that second range cue, lower until the thighs are parallel to the floor. You know, everybody has a different range of motion in their hips. Some people won't be able to come past that knee point. Some people might be slightly more flexible in their hips. Maybe they come 1 inch lower. As long as we're keeping that glute and quad engagement to protect the spine, it's case by case. You know, everybody's body is different. As we're coming down, making sure the knees are tracking the toes. Super common that the knees will start to come together. We call that knee valgus. So it's that slight outward angle. At the bottom of the movement, so that was our hinge and bend. We were talking about the descent. At the bottom, we want the weight to be slightly shifted back into the heels. So like we said, think about sitting in a chair. So he can even probably pick up his toes right in the base of the squat. That's how much we want the weight into the heels. Really important at the bottom, we're bracing the core, keeping the chest tall. We're in that push part, that ascent. We're driving through the heels, come back up to standing. Again, keeping that upright position the whole time. Just like we said in the chest press, breath work is really important, particularly because we're prepping for those really heavy weights in the peak phase. A lot of people are going to be able to pick up those heavy weights in Tokyo Disco or Fusion or what have you. It's an inhale right before we go down. We're bracing the core. We're holding the breath. We go all the way down and then exhale as we push the floor away. Powerful to come back up standing. All right.
All right, errors, common things that we see. Elbows, really getting them up. It is a lot of that wrist mobility that's affecting that elbow placement, but getting them nice and high, if it is new, especially for beginners that haven't really done squats to start with at all, the crossed arms is usually the way to go for those beginners. But keeping those elbows up slightly, imagine holding them up like headlights, right? So if there was lights on the ends of your elbows when you come up, that they're nice and high. And having that bar placed up onto those shoulders. Again, for a lot of our green stars, new guests, this is a great modification for them. Knees collapsing inward, which Anna did highlight. It's usually just poor glutes, just poor knee control. I would love to hear what some of you do to help members that you see knees are caving in. Heather, give me one.
Sometimes using a band.
Yeah, right? Like, what do we have in our studio that can help them? You know, grab the red band, the lightest band, put it on their knees, make sure they keep that tension in there that whole time. That's going to help them think about something else they need to do to fix that issue.
You can even just give them that mental cue. I find that's effective too. You know, if you don't have a band ready accessible, you can give them that cue of, okay, I want you to imagine, you know, if they've done that before, having a band right above your knees, imagine pushing out against that band. Of course, we should always have those bands accessible, but if for whatever reason, they're only there for a certain amount of time, you don't want to, you know, you have to cross the room to go get the band and bring it back. You're only there for one set. That's a quick, easy, just mental, envision it that way.
Next one is leaning too far forward, right? With a lot of our front loaded movements, which is 98% of what we do with our squats at a 45, right? That weight is going to naturally just pull everyone a little bit forward, right? And to combat that, you need some really great core engagement. You need some, you know, really great hip and flexibility, ankle flexibility, right? To help keep you stable in that place with that extra load on that front part of your body. My favorite cue is to just have them lift up their big toe and do it. Automatically, that puts their weight in their heel. There's no way you can squat with your toes not on, like, it's going to be in your heel automatically, right? If your toes are not on the floor. What we see is this, right? Because people are coming up. Sliding this here. The weights here, they don't have that core stability to help keep them nice and straight up. So they're leaning forward and then they're on their toe. If you lift up that big toe, I know we just talked about it wanting to be all spread through your foot, but a good little hack, if that big toe's up, they will come back in their heel and then be able to push with all of their toes as they come on up. So that's one of my favorites. Do we have any other favorites to help people that are on their toes not be on their toes?
I'm very tactile. So even with the knee thing, I'll typically get down on the floor and I'll resist their knees from caving in. And so just me sitting there like that and giving them that physical touch for maybe 1 or 2 reps helps them. And then with the elbows, I'll remind them that it's a shelf. So inflate that chest, inflate the shelf, stay tall. Because if you're staying tall, you're not going to collapse forward. Your already chest is facing, you know, a spot on at the front of the room, or I'll kind of assist their elbows. So as soon as they start going into that squat, I'm like, elbows stay up. And then that usually helps.
We usually have wedges out when we do front squats to help with that ankle mobility. And then once they find the bottom of that position, I'll have them kind of just pause for a couple seconds just to build on their mobility and strength a little bit more. So it's not as difficult the next time around.
Yeah, I love that. Wedges, or you could use the gray plates, right? Something that you put underneath their ankle, because typically it is an ankle mobility issue. So you can put it underneath to help them in that. Then they will have that stable, solid base. Caitlin?
Not really a cue, but just something to kind of bring their attention to is sometimes it's their shoes. So like people that wear running shoes to lift, like it puts a lot of weight on their toes. And so sometimes that's the issue as well. So like just bringing that up to them after class, like, hey, you might want to invest in some training shoes. But yeah, like Christina said, we will also use wedges or those gray plates to elevate their heels for ankle mobility.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely shoes is something that might be overlooked sometimes. But there was a member today actually, which it's funny they brought up that I told him to get other shoes. Like you could tell his running shoes are just not supporting him when he's here lifting. They are making his ankle do all these weird, funny things. Just look out for that, right? When you're scanning people, like I always start from the ground up. So today I noticed his shoes and I was like, yo, what are you wearing? Yeah, love that. Good call, Caitlin. Okay, rounding of the upper back. And again, I think this is common for squats, deadlifts. We see this all the time. It is just from a weak upper back and poor placement. What are some cue examples to help someone?
Proud chest.
Proud chest, yeah. Love that one. I say if you had a name tag, we always need to see your name tag. And so just making sure it's always like out, especially when you're moving through that squat in the bottom of that position, we should still be able to see your name tag, right? Love that one. Anything else?
I usually make them, once they grab the bar, roll their shoulders back with the bar in their hand so that they can feel how it feels to have their shoulders pushed back and down.
Yeah, that's a great, right? Always that great starting position, that athletic stance of just getting them set up first in that so they could feel it. Love. I believe, Mitchell, you were going to add something?
Yeah. We have a lot of military in our studio, so I always tell them to stand at position of attention with their shoulders, so they should be straight up and down, they're popping their chest out. That usually helps with the front squat and RDLs.
Yeah, you got to know your audience. There we go, right? So that way you can effectively coach them. Love that. And then barbell resting in your hands and not on your shoulders, right? So people will just hold the barbell up to here and then squat. And I think, again, depending on what that issue is, wrist mobility, weak flexibility, the crossing hands thing will really help solve that. And some people just don't know how to get into that position once they're here, and then they're kind of stuck. So go over, help them get there. And you might need to be there with them to help take it off until they get comfortable doing it on themselves.
Have you tried extending your arms just straight out and literally letting them find the shelf in their shoulders? That kind of helps with a lot of other things too.
Christina, what is it called again?
You just put your arms out straight.
I call it a zombie squat.
Oh yeah, I love that. I love a little zombie post-apocalyptic squat here. So yeah, your arms come straight out and the bar will find its spot. Like I could walk around, I could chill, I could chill, and it's stable, right? And then from here, I can do my squat and it stays. Okay? And they need to be straight because if they're not, the bar will fall. Like as soon as I put my arms down a little bit, it's going to start rolling, which it is. Okay. Yeah, love that one.
That's also a good starting cue before, like, for the crossing of the wrist, like how you said. Some people who don't know how to do it, it's like do the zombie arms and then do the cross. I helped a few people out with that today.
Yeah, it's like you're going to be a zombie and then you're going to die and be a vampire.
I have a question. What's the best way to dismount the bar if you have your arms crossed?
All right, so from here, anyone want to tell me what to do?
Zombie, then the jerker hold down into your elbows.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on the weight.
Yeah. Sorry. So what was it again, Anthony?
The zombie and then the zercher down into your elbows.
Love, right? So zercher. So essentially, how can you tell me to do that? If I don't know what zercher means, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Bend at your elbows, allow the bar to roll down your biceps.
Right, yes. Depending on the weight, they still might need the help. But yeah, if it's very, very slow, the bar, again, as soon as you bring those arms down, get ready to catch it in that crease of your elbow. If it's heavy, you might need to just help them.